Oh my god. And they were roommates. For fans of the Goldfinch. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. A dark academia-esque book about a sapphic romance between two brooding female artists. Sounds like something that was written for me personally, and I should have known that this book sounded too good to be true. As a lesbian reader, why would the fates align like that? They would not. When am I gonna learn my lesson? When? Hi guys, welcome to a video, and in today's video, I'm just going to be reviewing the book Sirens and Muses. As you can see, the front cover is quite beautiful. It almost makes up for everything else about this book. Almost. And this video will contain spoilers, so if you have not read this book, you have been warned. Before we begin, I'd just like to say a quick thank you to my members for supporting this content and supplying me with coffee. This channel defies both science and religion. It is the Frankenstein of lesbian YouTube channels. And it's thanks to you, it's alive. Eventually, they will chase me out of town with pitchforks and torches. If you're not familiar with Sirens and Muses, it follows the lives of four artists who are drawn into a web of rivalry and desire at an elite art school and on the streets of New York. So let's get into it. So we'll start with the positives. I really appreciated this book's attempt at portraying flawed, messy, and hopelessly human characters. Particularly the character of Karina, who is incredibly privileged, promiscuous, elusive, troubled, unfaithful, and complicated. It's always refreshing to read about female characters in particular who are so gritty and unapologetic, and for the most part, Sirens and Muses offers a rich tapestry of diverse personalities and perspectives, which works in its favor. Another element of the book I appreciated was the way that the Sapphic romance was intertwined with and explored through art. The parallels between Louisa and Karina's relationship and the art that they create is layered and thoughtful. From beginning to the end in this novel, art is utilized to clue the reader in on how Louisa and Karina are truly feeling. And this is a reoccurring theme in the book, which continuously shapes and peels back new layers of their dynamic. The author also often uses art as a metaphor for Karina's sexuality, namely through her attachment to the painting of Volley by Egon Schiele, which is used to signify her desire for women all throughout the book. And interestingly, when we learn about the backstory behind Karina's Schiele painting, clear parallels can be drawn between Volley and Louisa, and Egon and Karina in terms of class, as well as the artist-muse dynamic mirrored between both relationships. So Louisa and Karina's connection to one another is not only reflected in art, but it's explored through it as well. And it's laudable how Antonia and Gress employed art to say so much about the characters, their relationships, and occasionally as a clue to the direction of the narrative. Finally, on the list of positives, the book also thoughtfully maps out the art world for the reader, presenting it as a prism in which you are encouraged to consider all the aspects of. The book touches upon issues such as inequality and sexism in the art world, and highlights the interesting juxtaposition of how female artists and their art is so often devalued, whilst depictions of the female body appear more frequently in art and are more sought after because the art market is largely dominated by male collectors. In fact, there's not much this book doesn't cover when it comes to making commentary on the art world. It explores how art intersects with class, capitalism, technology, politics, and how that impacts the kind of art that gets made and by who. It also portrays how jealousy, resentment, and competitiveness can manifest between artists because of those intersections. And I think the fact that this novel makes so many thought-provoking thought-provoking statements and commentary from various perspectives about art is possibly one of its best aspects. You can tell that the author did a lot of research in that department and it paid off. So, moving on to my criticisms of this book, and oh boy, there's quite a few. Number one has to be the writing. To me, the writing quality started off as adequate, but quickly nosedived as the novel progressed. The author seemed more concerned about rushing the narrative along and trying to cram in as much commentary as possible than she did fleshing out the characters that she had created and exploring the nuances of their relationships with each other. And as a result, as much as I liked the concept of the characters that she had created, I wasn't able to establish a connection with any of them. And Karina in particular is a prime example of this. The author sets Karina up as this very flawed, complex human being who is constantly having to navigate quite a lot of emotional turbulence. Yet whenever there was an opportunity to really create depth or build character, the author just seemed to gloss over everything in order to move on to the next thing. I felt very shut out from Karina as a character, as I did with the rest of the characters, and it was definitely down to the way that they were written. I suspect this is partially because the author was writing 4 different storylines from 4 different perspectives, which is incredibly ambitious. And in the end, she either didn't want to or didn't have the time to commit to all of those narratives properly and do the characters justice. Instead, she just wanted to rush through it in order to wrap it up. To be blunt, the book really would have benefited from cutting out Preston and Robert's chapters altogether. The novel's most unique and interesting elements revolve around its complex Sapphic female characters and its exploration of the art world through them. The fact that Sirens and Muses diminishes the development of distinctive female characters to accommodate for repetitious male ones means it unwittingly contributes to the issue of female disparagement in art that it underscores. When it comes to Robert and Preston, I understand the inclusion of their perspectives in relation to creating more varied commentary on the art world, but their chapters offered nothing much more beyond this, and often felt like disjointed fillers, clumsily integrated with Louisa and Karina's more realised ones. Ultimately, this left the book as an odd hybrid of undeveloped characters and narratives. This book is a prime example of quantity over quality, with the author trying to cover as much ground as possible at the expense of everything else. And lastly, the relationship between Louisa and Karina is probably what disappointed me the most in this book, which sucks considering the Sapphic elements are the reason that I bought it in the first place. Where do I even start? Oh my gosh. The author makes it very clear to the reader that Louisa and Karina have these deep, overwhelming feelings for each other above everyone else, and yet their relationship with each other is treated as secondary to their relationships with other people in the book. Even when the author finally allows the both of them to get together, it's not long before she tears them apart again over Louisa's choice of painting for an art exhibition, which causes Karina to have a mental breakdown and run away with Preston, a man who she doesn't love yet spends most of her time with in the novel anyway. Now, I understand that Karina is bisexual, but the author makes it clear time and time again that she has a preference for women. So whilst I can understand the motivations for having her initially hook up with Preston in order to portray her bisexuality and build upon her promiscuous devil-may-care characterization, her having a prolonged relationship with him just didn't make any sense. And it felt really contrived. I think if you're going to have a bisexual love triangle which drags out through the majority of the novel, at least give both of those relationships substance, so the dragging it out is justified. Even when Karina finally breaks up with Preston and gets back together with Louisa after all of the heartbreak and time spent apart, they never actually have a proper conversation about what's happened. Once again, their relationship is just glossed over in order to move the plot along as quickly as possible. But I think the icing on the cake is, in the end, Louisa goes back home because her grandfather has died. And when she's home, she decides she doesn't want to return to New York, barely even considering her relationship with Karina in that process. Then at the very end, she finally remembers that she has a girlfriend and rings Karina up to see if she wants to give up her life in New York to come and live with her, and Karina says that she'll think about it. And that's how it's left. Okay, so I think my question is, what was the point of building them up as this supposedly overwhelmingly intense love affair, but then switching it up so that Louisa suddenly prioritizes herself and treats Karina as an afterthought? And I don't have a problem with the concept of Louisa prioritizing herself, her own wants and needs in the end. It's the way that it was executed that was confusing. I don't understand how we got from A to B. I think if the author had spent more time developing Louisa and Karina as characters and dedicated more time to exploring their connection to one another on a deeper level, so that we understood who they were and what their motivations are a lot better, the ending might have made a lot more sense. But because their characters and their relationship was so neglected in order to focus on other characters and other things happening in the book, and in order to push the narrative along at a quicker pace, the ending just felt so loose, so unfinished, so vague, so half-baked, so lackluster. All of the words. It was disappointing. I have a lot of other criticisms for this book, but for the sake of whittling this video down to a respectable time, I think we'll leave it at that. Okay guys, if you've read Sirens and Muses, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments section below, in the depths. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!